Hello and welcome to the Wealth Legacy Blueprint Podcast with your hosts, Richard and Andrew Hanson. I'm your producer, RJ Malik, and Andrew and Richard, you have a new topic and a new guest, although you're real familiar with him and he was related to someone you've already spoken with. Is that correct?
Yeah, so previously we had Tom on, and now we got his son, Nick, and you'll see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know, when Richard and I got together, to do this podcast, it's like we just want good people. So
it's going to be another adventure for me sitting back and listening to the show.
Yeah, just less technical issues because I had to teach Tom a couple things. So hopefully Nick knows how to work a phone and a computer, so we're good to go. Well, yeah, I just kind of want to kick it to Rich and just kind of the importance, and we'll get to Nick because just his story. And again, when we started this, we want good people. We'll sprinkle in content every now and then, but our original goal for this podcast is just have good people on, good stories, and then we'll sprinkle in all the serious stuff. So, Rich, I want to ask you kind of what does it mean to kind of bring the whole family in when it comes to financial, and really how important is that to you?
Well, first and foremost, it's real exciting to see the men you guys have become. I remember starting with your dad, Nick. I started with him in probably 1995 and got to know you guys, first off, socially in a family, and to see you guys grow and then introduce you and Drew. And I remember we would practice our Pop Warner team on Saturdays. You guys would have, from Dana Hills, you'd have your stretching that Saturday. And I remember warming up or after the game, and I took Drew, who's, I think, 4 years younger than you, introduced him to you, and you'd have thought,
oh my God, I'm remembering that.
To a pro football player, and you were so kind. Yeah, you were so kind, and if he would have had a pin, he probably would have gotten an autograph, but that was my first introduction to you, Nick. And I kind of feel like one of the uncles from afar. I get to catch up with you on Facebook and hear the stories about the grandkids. So I feel a big part about that. And one of the things that we've tried to do on this podcast with your dad and some other generational topics is this business I started 43 years ago. And Drew is the future, only because of age, and he's better looking and he's smarter. But he's taking it forward. And it's always our privilege to work generationally. And we've got the great privilege of working with you through your dad, and as well as other family members. And that's comfortable from us because we've gotten a good report from your folks saying, hey, we've done good, and let's make sure our kids are running that same route. So it's great. We're so happy to have you aboard for as long as we've had you aboard, and to see you guys grow into the fathers you are and getting payback for being the boys that you were when we had you as a young age. So I'm going to sit back and watch you guys do your thing, and I'll have a couple questions. But Nick, we're so proud of who you've become and where you are in life, and it's our privilege to be part of that.
I really appreciate it. And first of all, I remember your name from a very young age. It seemed like anytime I needed to raise funds for a sports team, my dad's always like, hey, hit up Mr. Hanson. He's good for it. And so sorry I was always knocking on your door asking for money. But you were always super generous and super supportive. And, you know, you don't forget that stuff as you're, you know, a young kid and as you're growing up and stuff like that. And I do remember that introduction to Drew. Doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but my goodness, like this time is flying, and you know, it's pretty crazy.
That was a memory I thought was gone, and Rich just brought it up, and I can remember it clearly now.
Yeah.
Like on the side at Dana Hills High School.
Yep.
That's
back when our knees didn't hurt and everything felt good still, you know?
I was trying to get up out of the couch the other day.
Thanks.
Yeah. I was trying to get up out of the couch the other day, And when you get out of the couch when you're young, it's just like, okay, get up.
Yes.
But now it's just like, you know how like the mankind evolution from like ape to like neo whatever.
Yes.
You're just slowly trying to get up.
Yeah.
It takes like 4 or 5 steps.
I'm stuck in the Neanderthal form now, just kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
enough
Like a
of you
hunchback.
young bucks talking about how painful it is. Get to mine and your dad's age. I need a crowbar to get me off the couch. I can't even lay
Can't
down.
even imagine.
Oh, man.
Can't even imagine.
You guys are looking pretty good, let me tell you. I run calls nowadays as a fireman on people your age, and I'm like, there's no way this is correct, your birthday, because I see you and my dad, and you guys you're doing something right. So hopefully Andrew and I can follow suit here.
Yeah, they're drinking.
Yeah, it's a lot of
that's for
Botox
sure.
and plastic surgery. No, it's not.
I hope you have a good
And duct tape.
contact.
They got a duct tape. Yeah. Yeah, Nick, you mentioned the firefighting. Could you kind of give us a little bit of what you're doing there and kind of like where you are now? I know you just recently got a promotion. Could you talk a little bit, currently where you are and how you got there?
Yeah, happy to. So I currently am a fire captain for Orange County Fire Authority. And yes, I just promoted about 4 months ago. I've been in the fire service for about 10 years, more or less. And so it was a change for my wife and I, because I spent 10 years in the corporate world in sales roles and things of that nature out of college. And I missed the camaraderie of being on the sports team, because I was an athlete my whole life through college and everything. And so a couple guys I played ball with in school, along with some other influential people in my life, were like, hey, you should look into firefighting. It's a great career. It's something, you can feel proud of. It's physically demanding along with mentally, and you get that camaraderie aspect. And so they also did say to a man, like, you're not going to get rich doing this job, but you're going to make a good living and you can support your family. And it took me being young and dumb, getting out of college, thinking, hey, I need to go make millions of dollars to, keep up with the Joneses. It took me maturing a little bit to be like, you know what, if I can do something I love with people I care about and feel proud of what I'm doing, then I think that's something worthwhile, make me happy. So went that route. Was fortunate enough to get hired. I started with Salinas Fire Department, a little 6-station department up near Monterey. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to come back down to Orange County, where I grew up. And I've been working here for the last 10 years or so. And it's great. I mean, pros and cons, like with any profession, you know what I mean? But I do feel proud of what we do. And I'm meeting some great people along the way and getting some really cool experiences with it all. So it's going well.
It's funny you say that, because I mean that was exactly kind of what your dad said to us on the last time we got to talk with him. Where it's just, he was in the corporate world and he wanted to find something a little bit more fulfilling. But if you've got good people around you and the finances are where they should be, then there's, like you said, there's pros and cons to each. It was probably not the easiest choice to make, but at the end of the day, it's a long road traveled, and it seems like you're just making your way up to the top. So that's always great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know we're going to get into it, so I don't want to try to steal any thunder with questions that are coming, but I've come from a close family like you guys do, and I think that's why we've gravitated towards each other as families here. And I feel extremely fortunate coming from the family that I do. But you kind of look at your old man as kind of like, what's the path he took? And he blazed that trail. He did the corporate thing. And I remember him saying he would be driving to the airport pretty much every week to go cover territories for most of the week. And he was like, my sister and I at the time were both very young. And he's like, I don't want to be gone for all their childhood, And so that was kind of a catalyst for me changing careers at about 30 years old. But with that being said, like with this job, that's probably one of the cons, is I leave for, 2 to 3 days at a time, which is a bummer. But then I'm home for, 3 or 4 at a time, and I can do stuff with the kids. So it's a balancing act. I do deal with some like guilt and stuff there. But when you look at the big picture, like we all got to make a living and, provide for the families. And I think that eventually as the kids grow up, they'll see that, and hopefully they'll take a lesson from me like I did from my folks and apply that in their lives, hopefully. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nick, could you give me a quick idea? You said you're like on 3 days off a certain amount. What's a typical work week for you?
So every department is slightly different. The schedule that Orange County Fire Authority adheres to is it's called a 4896. So our base schedule is 48 hours on, so 2 days on, and then 96 hours off, 4 days off. Rarely do we work that because, especially like now during fire season, which it seems like fire season in California is growing every single year as far as the duration. But we will we'll either pick up overtime to make some extra money in those 4 days that we have off, or we get what's called force hired. So if we, like right now, OCFA, we have 2 strike teams of engines. So that's essentially 10 engines, 4 people per engine. So there's 40 plus people all committed to Santa Barbara County at a fire right now. And so there's a need to cover the stations within the county to protect our jurisdiction. And so we get force hired. So I just got off this morning. I thought I was coming home yesterday, but they called me the night before and said, hey, we need you at this station. You're getting force hired. So I worked yesterday, I got off today, and I have today, tomorrow, and Friday off. And so it changes all the time. But it's kind of cool too, though, because some of the guys I talked to before I got into this profession, they were like, hey, it's almost like you have access to an ATM within a certain, there's parameters there, obviously, but if you have a trip or you have a project you need to work on, you can pick up overtime. Yeah, you're going to be gone a little bit more, but you have the ability to make some extra coin to be able to cover some expenses. So yeah, it's, at first it was a tough transition, but it was before we had kids. And so my wife and I kind of learned to navigate this schedule. And now, like, communication is key, as I'm sure you two will attest to. Like, I wasn't the best communicator initially. Now I'm like, all right, this is what I see coming. This is what we got going on, especially with the 3 kids, So I think we're handling it better now. But yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like.
How does Erica handle the just that difference? I mean, it's not a typical, like, Drew might leave his house at, let's call it 8 o'clock, and depending on his schedule, he may be home at 5:30, 6, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. How is she navigating it? That's that partner that you have certainly is a big part of it. And we've obviously been married, so we know the dynamics. How does she handle that? All of a sudden, she got 3 of them, and you're not there for 2 or 3 days.
You know what? It takes a special type of person to be a firewife. I mean, it takes a special person to be a mom in general, because it's you don't get paid. I mean, I've seen studies that say they would be making $200,000 a year or whatever based on everything they have to do and deal with those little terrorists on a daily basis. But it takes a special type of person to be able to do that, because in a lot of regards, it's almost like she's a single mom for, more than a third of the time. But Erica is very systematic with everything. So she has a plan. And at first, I wasn't always in agreement with it as far as like everything's scheduled. The kids' bedtime, it's like they're on a schedule. This is the time they go to bed. This is the time they do quiet time. This is the time we do snack. This is the time. I'm like, man, this is so rigid. You know what I mean? Like, what happened to our life before kids? I thought we were going to be those cool parents that just brought the kids with us. Like, we're not going to change. But I quickly learned everybody benefits from the schedule, them and then us in turn, because when they get off that schedule, they're more ornery. And so she researches everything. She runs this place when I'm gone, so I have to be careful and pick and choose my battles when I get home, because this is her domain, and I don't want to come in and try to captain the ship, because then it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. She's always locked and loaded, and it's like, all right.
She's fully loaded, extra ammunition in the back. You're done for.
Always. I got to do some serious due diligence and research if I'm coming to the table with a different argument. Like, hey, you know what? I think we need to try this. Yeah. But no, she handles it really well. I'm impressed. She left me with the kids for a couple of days, and I think my hair turned gray. I lost part of it. I didn't know where one of them was half the time. So lucky the house didn't burn down.
Yeah. Was Erica with you during that transition? Deciding. How far along did you guys meet? Like,
when we first started dating and when we got married, I was still in the corporate world, and then really soon thereafter, I made the switch. And to her credit, I mean, we knew Southern California, and I got hired by Salinas, and so we packed our bags and we moved up to Monterey. And she was supportive the whole way. We didn't have kids yet, but it was weird coming from such a close family. It was like, hey, everyone's down here. There's no guarantees we're going to get back. This might be our new home up here, 6-7 hours away. And she was super supportive. And in retrospect, we look back at that year and it was like one of the coolest years of our lives. I mean, living in Pacific Grove, right by Carmel and Big Sur, like doesn't hurt, you know, but it was a pretty cool time. So yeah, she made the transition with me. Like I said, we never have argued too much. But like there was some adjusting for sure to the new schedule and lifestyle. And she's a licensed therapist. And so I dealt with a lot of guilt making that transition because I knew my upbringing, and my dad starting that landscape company he was at everything. Like he would show up midweek for a college football practice. I didn't know he was coming. He was at every holiday, every game, which I really admired. And I was like, man, am I robbing my kids? Because with this profession I'm in, I'm going to miss some of that stuff. And I'm going to try my best to miss as few things as possible and move my schedule around as best I can. But I'm gonna miss some of that, and I have a hard time with that. I still battle with it. But she made a good point. She's like, hey, these kids don't know what your experience was like growing up. All they know is theirs, and this is their experience. And I reached out to kids who had grown up in the fire environment, and now they're adults. And I said, hey, did you resent your dad for doing this profession? And to a person, they were all like, you know what? It was awesome. I felt like I had like 10 dads in the community that were always looking out for me or that I could lean on if I needed something. And 2, if we had to have a holiday at the fire station, we'd show up and there'd be a bunch of other kids we'd be running around with and having a blast. So that kind of helped put my mind at ease. And so she's been a good support system along the way here.
Yeah, just even having that kind of experience where, you know, you're away most of the time. But I mean, kids, you know, they say, hey, my dad's a firefighter.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of something they can take with them as well. And you spoke to that environment, like just bringing family, like that's community. And that's, you know, kind of what we were experiencing playing football as well. It's like you have that camaraderie and that teamship and that family. And that's kind of what me and Richard always want to strive for. You know, and it might not be as cool as being on a football team or, you know, being part of a fire department, but, you know, our whole thing is just like family, community, reach out, help each other out, and just, you know, finances are something we can tackle, but at the end of the day, it's like we're all family. So it's powerful stuff.
It's just as cool. I mean, the fire truck, the kid gets over it after a while. Like I've sat in the truck, Dad, like I'm good at it. You know what I mean? But it's all about.
I want to go in the helicopter now.
Yeah, right. I'm like, relax. You're 2 years old, little man. You don't run the show. But it's all about working with people that you respect and you care about and that you're going to go the extra mile for and you trust and know that they've got your back. And like you guys obviously have that going on, being family and just the people that you are, you attract similar minded people. And that's all I was looking for. And in sales for me, some people love it. Just for me, it was constantly like, hey, where are my numbers at? I remember trying to take a vacation and like with Erica when we were first, you know, together, and I was like, I can't get away from this, you know what I mean? And that's really where I was like, I want to be working with people that I know are like I can trust. And you know, it's like a football locker room. I'm sure you remember, Drew, like there were a lot of guys on the football team, and there were some that you were like brothers with that you had a lifelong bond with, and there were others that maybe you didn't jive with as well and you weren't as crazy about. And the fire service and the corporate world, same way, you know what I mean? So it's just finding those people you trust, you care about, you respect, and then gravitating towards those people and going from there.
Well, I'm going to throw a quick question in here just because we're talking about sports. Now, I remember when I graduated high school, I ended up playing 4 years in college, and I brought home a VCR of our games.
Oh, what's that called? What was it? A VCR?
Exactly. It's a VCR. There you go. You know, that big box thing you put in the
I don't know what you're talking about, but go ahead. We'll run with it.
Yeah, I showed it to Drew. I had it on the TV, and he's looking, and he's perplexed, and I'm pointing out what number I am. And he said, did you guys have helmets then? I'm like, dude, come on now. That was in the late 70s. Don't give me that kind of crap. But so the continuum of being a team, and I think obviously you've got to depend on the guy next to you fighting a fire or getting someone extracted from a car accident, whatever it may be, and those bonds are important. And when it comes to those football teams, I'm only going to chastise you once, but I know there's a Northern California team that you like in the professional ranks that you know, I don't have much to say because I'm a Charger fan, So I shouldn't have even have brought this up, but we still love you because, north and south. But so anyway, I just wanted to give that to you, and I shouldn't have because you can get me on the Chargers. We're not very good at this point.
No, it doesn't matter, though. The Chargers, you guys got the right coach now. You got Coach Harbaugh in the building. You guys are headed in the right direction. Yeah. I've got a love-hate thing with the Niners. I'm really doing some self-reflection here because my kids are starting to gravitate towards the 49ers, and I'm like, my wife sometimes looks at me and she's like, do you really want to do this to them? Like, they're the new Buffalo Bills. Didn't the Bills make like 4 Super Bowls in the like late 80s, early 90s, and they lost all of them? Like, I'd rather be
4 in a row.
Yes, I'd rather be bad than get that close and keep losing and just ripping the heart out. So I have a love-hate relationship with them right now. So I might be having to jump on that Chargers bandwagon, at least as a backup team. Root for Coach, I got that affiliation there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And speaking of Coach Harbaugh, tell us a little bit about your experience and when, what years were you with Coach Harbaugh, and what's the greatest thing about him, and what's the funniest thing about him, and what do you think about him going forward for our Chargers?
Yeah, so it's funny because guys I work with always roll their eyes when Harbaugh stories come up because they're like, oh, did you play for Coach Harbaugh? I'm like, all right, guys, I'm not telling you any more stories. But no, so I was at University of San Diego, little 1AA program. That was middling, average program when I got there. I was there from 2002 to 2006. And he came on after our spring season, or after my sophomore season, for spring ball. And so he was there for my last 2 years. And I grew up watching him play quarterback, and I liked him as a player because I remember he was tough as nails. I remember him getting knocked out of a couple games with like split lip all the way through. He'd get stitched up, he'd come back in, he'd be taking a beating, and he would keep going. And I was like, I like this guy. So it was newsworthy when we hired him for this little school in San Diego. And the first thing that jumped out to me, for better or for worse, is he was one of the most competitive people I've ever met in my life. And so it took our program to new heights. We won a mid-major national championship for the level we played at my senior year. My quarterback, Josh Johnson, I was a wide receiver. My quarterback still bouncing around the NFL. He's with the Ravens. He's got to be 38 or something like that now since I'm 40. But yeah, Coach Harbaugh came on, and his competitive nature, along with he was really, really good at using the connections he had because he was the Raiders quarterback coach before he took the job at USD. He put together a coaching staff that was like all ex-NFL coaches. Our defensive coordinator, who has since passed, was a gentleman by the name of Dave Adolph, who was an assistant head coach for the Chiefs back in the day to Dick Vermeil. And just I love that guy. Just old school. He had that tenor in his voice that you hear from like the old historical like coaches, like giving speeches in the locker room and stuff like that. And so, but he came in there and he set the tempo from the get-go. He had us up. So funny Harbaugh story. He got us up around like 4 a.m. during spring ball. This is like off-season training, and he'd have us do conditioning. That was like really hard conditioning. And there was this hill behind San Diego that was about a mile long, and the grade just got steeper and steeper as he went up this hill. So you ran that hill one time and you were gassed. I mean, he split us into position groups. So the receivers and the DBs were running together, linebackers, tight ends, running backs, and like linemen. And one time up was like all you needed, but he had us run it like 3 or 4 times that morning. And he was running it with us, but he wasn't trying to beat anybody. He was like middle of the pack with the like running backs, like slow and steady. And it was the second or the third time up the hill, he starts getting sick. Like he starts puking everywhere. And he doesn't stop. He doesn't lean into the bushes. He just keeps running like steely-eyed straight ahead, just vomiting all down the front of his shirt. And he just keeps running. And we're like, what is this guy's problem? Like, this guy's a sociopath, man. Like, what? And then at the end of it, he's covered in his own puke. And he's like, all right, hell of a workout, man. Like, bring it in. And he's like, got his arm up, and he wants everyone to put their arm in. And we're like, what is wrong with this guy? So that's one of the classic Coach Harbaugh stories we like to tell. But what happened was we had a bunch of guys that were like, you know what, this isn't for me. Like, I'm not this dedicated or committed to this. a lot of guys tapped out, and it left us with a nucleus of players that took that program to new heights. And so I respected that. And he had a lot of Harbaugh'isms or monikers or whatever you want to call them. You've probably seen him when he was coaching the Niners. He used to say the same thing. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. But one of my favorite ones was he always used to say, if you don't grind, you don't shine. And that applies to life with anything, right? If you're not putting the work in, you're not going to rise to the top. And it's like, you got to do those extra things that nobody wants to do to be able to get to the levels you want to get to. And, so I know a lot of guys respected him. I was a captain my senior year, so I had to like vouch for certain guys and have a couple battles with him, go head to head with him, which is no easy feat because he's a tough cookie. But we have kept in touch, and our relationship's almost improved since I haven't had to play directly for him. And we'll text a couple times a year, and it's cool. It's crazy. He remembers me with all the players that he's coached throughout the years and at the high levels he's reached and all that stuff. So I feel fortunate to have played for him, and it's some good times that I'll always reflect upon. Yeah.
Well, great that we can make sure now you have that relationship. You got to come back.
Yeah.
You got to come back in the fold. You got Coach Jim there.
I know.
You got to be a Charger fan. So, I'll put a little pressure on you, but
I like it.
What great stories. That's some things you'll, obviously, when you get to our age, they're even more important. And that's just awesome. That is something special. One last question I had, with all the heat that's going on now, again, we're out here in Henderson. We're at 118.
Oof.
The dogs won't even go outside. I don't want to take them outside because it's too hot. Do you guys see a great uptick? I know where you're at, it's not quite as hot, but do you have any tips real quick for folks out there dealing with this kind of heat or the humidity or those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, are you saying just from like staying like hydrated, taking care of themselves so they don't have medical emergencies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's making sure you hydrate, spend as little time as you can out there. We're really big on, because it's not as hot here as it is for you guys right now, but there are firefighters that work in Phoenix and work in Las Vegas and work in the desert and work in these temperatures. And it's just that electrolyte replacement. Take electrolyte supplements if you can, just to get those electrolyte levels where they need to be, and then make sure you're getting as much time out of the sun as you can too. So, and limited salt. Look out for the pooches and the animals too, because they feel it. So I can't imagine fighting fires in that heat with all the gear we wear and stuff. Like, I'm already burning up in the weather we have here, so it's got to be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any sort of tips or tricks for people who are homeowners out in, during fire seasons, kind of keep an eye out? I know you can't prevent everything, but are there kind of little things that you can periodically check?
Yeah. I mean, some of the main things that you want to make sure is that like, you have like protected space around your house. So you don't want a lot of like foliage or like dry brush or anything butted up against your house, because God forbid a brush fire were to break out in that area. They can spread super fast, obviously, this time of year when everything's so dried out and the fuel beds are so dry, it'll spread super rapidly. So if you can give yourself what we call some defensible space around your house, whether it's a tree, touching your roof or whatever, that's going to give you the best success if, God forbid, something were to, pop off, and just protect your property and that type of thing. So we have a program with Orange County Fire Authority called Ready, Set, Go. That's online that people can look up, and it tells them all sorts of different steps that they can take to kind of make sure they're protecting their homes. And it's more for like what we call wildland urban interface areas, where you're kind of like not in neighborhoods like you and me. It's more like you might have some wilderness areas kind of butted up against neighborhoods where, wildland starts, and the fuels there are bigger and more sufficient to really fuel a big fire. But nowadays, I mean, you're getting fires that'll spread into neighborhoods, because it's crazy how fast these ember casts and firebrands will travel and things like that. So it's just being smart, and it's just, not, throwing a cigarette out of a window. Like, a lot of these fires out here are started by, catalytic converter, like sparking on the side of a road, getting into brush on the side of a freeway, and then running up a hill, or someone throwing a cigarette out the window. And, so it's just being smart, especially when it's hot.
Well, and then I kind of want to tie into sort of the financial aspect of family.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything that you felt was difficult or kind of overwhelming when you first kind of talked to your dad about, how his situation is set up, or, kind of coming to him for guidance as far as what you should do and how you should manage your finances going forward?
No, my dad's always been supportive and helped kind of like iron out some of the details that maybe I wasn't clear on, or he would just tell me, go hit up Rich. I don't know the answer to this. I'll get you squared away. But just seeing him be fiscally responsible and work his tail off, and he was always a bit of a tightwad. Like, we had a great upbringing, but like, you know what I mean? I gotta tell this story. I'll try to make it short-winded, but this kind of embodies my dad and kind of how I grew up, and it's okay. But he was notorious for, he'd pick us up from he'd get us after a soccer tournament or high school soccer game or whatever. And he'd be like, all right, you guys hungry? Yeah. He's like, what do you want? And we'd be like, oh, Carl's Jr. or whatever, whatever fast food commercials were out. And he's like, oh, you know what? There's a Taco Bell in the corner right here. This is more convenient. I'm just going to pull in here. It's like, why'd you even ask us? He's like, what do you want? And then it's like, I want that Crunchwrap Supreme thing that I saw on the commercial, or, and he's like, all right, Crunchwrap Supreme, like this, that, the other. Okay, cool. You stay here. I'll go pick it up. I'll run in. Runs in every time. He would come out, whether he was at Taco Bell or we ended up at McDonald's or something. He'd be like, they were having a special, like 25-cent tacos. You didn't get your Crunchwrap Supreme. There's 3 tacos in there for you for like 75 cents. I'm like, dude, why do you even ask us then? You know what I mean? Like, you get my hopes up. I thought I was getting a double Western bacon cheeseburger, not this, whatever this is. You know what I mean? So it's a silly story, but we rib him about that stuff all the time still, and he laughs and just shakes his head. But I mean, he was fiscally responsible, and I saw that he wasn't a big spender. Like, we had a great upbringing, we had everything we needed, but like, we didn't have a boat, we didn't have an RV, we didn't have all these toys. But at the same time, he put us through college, and we didn't have to worry about that. So I didn't have to leave college with debt like a lot of young adults do. And so, yeah, I got that from him and my mom. They both were just smart with their money. And so it's taught me to like, just have a plan, think ahead, what's coming down the line. And fortunately, I've had a relationship with both of you, and we've sat down, and talked about some of that, which, probably need to do again here for the little guy and get something going for him as I think about college and I think about weddings. And I think that's the stuff that keeps me up at night, that I'm like, oh my gosh, all right, we got to have a plan, So, yeah.
Well, I will tell you, there's many nights and days, not only socially but business-wise, with your parents. And I remember as we got further along, closer to that retirement, I would go up to Annie and go, you can spend money. Go ahead, spend it. And your dad would be looking at me like, what? No. And I said, no, we did good. Annie, you go ahead and get that kitchen remodeled. And then we'd be done. And he'd call me up. He goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm taking care of my girl, not you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we've had some great times. And I know, which you obviously see, the grandkids are their life now.
Yeah.
And what he did and how he built this time in his life, and we were fortunate to be a part of it, that's the enjoyable part now. And your parents so love their children, but you mean nothing to them now.
I know.
It's the grandchildren. Just so you know, Nick.
I know.
Telling you.
Andrew, tell me, these guys have gotten soft as they've gotten older. Way soft. I remember looking at my dad one time, and he's like, the stuff he's buying for them, or even like, he was sitting there letting my mom and the kids shop, and I'm like, what happened to you, dude? I'm like, who are you, man? Like,
your heart broke when he's like, here, guys, I got you a double Western bacon cheeseburger. You're like, what?
Without a doubt. He's like, you want dessert too? Yeah, cool. Like, we got that. Who are you, man? And I'm like, he's definitely embraced retirement, which is cool. I'm glad to see it, seeing how hard he worked all the years, just like you have, Rich. And I was wondering how he would kind of transition into retirement. I think we all were, because he's such a type A, like go. Used to drive me nuts. He couldn't sit still and watch a football game with me. He was up at every commercial, like, I'm going to go mow the section of the lawn. I got to do this. I'm like, dude, can you just relax? And he's definitely embraced it, and he's starting to spend some of his hard-earned cash. And I'm like, slow down, bro. That's supposed to be some of my inheritance here. What are you doing? Let's think about the future. Let's not throw it all out the window. Just kidding.
Yeah, here's your budget, Dad.
Yeah.
You need to do this now.
Yeah, but to your
I
point,
gotta
Rich,
take
he's
care
like,
of
I
it.
got grandkids, man. They got expensive tastes. I got to get them, hook them up.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
All right, Drew, you got anything else for our man here?
No, I just want to thank Nick again for joining us today. That's
Yeah.
always such a pleasure to meet with the Gartons and then the second generation of Gartons, and really is a pleasure. Nick, thank you again. Just awesome conversation, and we'll catch up throughout. Maybe we'll check up on you in the fall and see Brandon in a Chargers hat or not. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, if one shows up on my doorstep, I'm not going to turn it down. I'll tell you that much. But I feel honored that you guys included me in this. I appreciate it. And I just feel very fortunate to have you guys in our lives, because I know you guys are people we can depend upon. You're an extension of the family. And it's important as you're setting up, we joked about, but my sole focus in life now is to make sure that my kids are provided for. We're raising them with the work ethic and understanding like hard work and what things cost, and laying that groundwork like my dad and my mom both did for me and my sisters, and like you've done, Rich, for your kids. And you guys are good people, like you talked about, and it's just feel fortunate to have you both in our lives. So thanks for having me on, and I hope I get to see both of you guys soon.
You will. We'll be up in Orange County coming up in 3 weeks. We'll figure out a way to get together for lunch.
That would be awesome.
Or maybe even dinner, and we'll go from there. But Nick, it's always a pleasure, my friend. And my next step is to put you and your dad together on one of these. It'll take 4 hours, but we'll have fun.
Hey, the old man can talk now too. I don't know. He always says I'm not a people person. Like, get out of here. What are you talking about, man?
Yeah,
Anyway.
he is.
Yeah.
He is.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so you guys can check us out on our website, www.generationswealthmgt.com. You can check us out. Our YouTube channel's on there as well as you can find us on any of the podcasts, iTunes, whatever the other ones are. All the links are in our websites. Again, thank you, Nick. Appreciate everything, relationships we have. It's just funny to think, 20 plus years ago, I was on the sideline of Dana Hills High School. I couldn't make eye contact with you because I was just like, oh, this guy's this huge football player. So glad to see where we are now, and appreciate it again. Thank you, man.
Thanks, guys. Stay cool out there, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
You got it, Nick.
Sounds good. Take care, man.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Wealth Legacy Blueprint. Don't be a stranger. Hit that follow button to stay connected. Got questions? Need some personal finance tips? We're just a click away at www.generationswealthmgt.com, or give us a ring at 1-833-948-2466. Remember, it's about more than money. It's about your journey to financial freedom. Stick with us for more real talk and real strategies to make your financial dreams come true. Opinions expressed here are our own and our guests, not necessarily those of Generations Wealth Management Group. This podcast is all about education and not direct financial advice. For the nitty-gritty on your own financial situation, always chat with a professional.